The famous lawyer disappeared 32 minutes before the most important trial of the year. Nobody knew where he was. And somehow that became my problem. I stood in the lobby of the courthouse balancing 2 coffee trays against my hip while my phone vibrated inside my pocket. Another message from my supervisor. "Where are you?" I glanced at the time. 8:28 a.m. The hearing started at 9. Normally that wouldn't have mattered. I was just an intern. The person who carried files, printed exhibits, fetched coffee, smiled when nobody remembered my name. But the second I stepped into the firm's conference room inside the courthouse, I knew something was wrong. Nobody was drinking coffee. Nobody was talking. 10 people stood around the table staring at their phones. The tension felt heavy enough to touch. I carefully set the trays down. No one noticed. A senior associate paced near the window. Still nothing? A woman shook her head. Straight to voicemail. What about his driver? No answer. My stomach tightened. They were talking about Ethan Cole, the lawyer, the one whose face appeared in magazines, the one clients paid millions to hire, the one who never missed court, ever. I quietly moved toward the document boxes stacked near the wall. Interns survived by staying invisible. Today seemed like a good day to remain invisible. Then the conference room door opened. A tall man entered. The room immediately fell silent. Even I recognized him. Damien Cross, billionaire, CEO, client. The man being sued for $600 million. He looked calm. Too calm. That somehow made everyone else look more nervous. "Where is Ethan?" he asked. Nobody answered immediately. A partner cleared his throat. "We're trying to locate him." Damien stared. Just stared. The silence stretched. Finally he said, "The trial starts in 29 minutes. "I know. You knew an hour ago." The partner looked away. That told me everything. Nobody had a solution. Damien's jaw tightened. Not dramatically. Just enough. The kind of reaction that meant he was running out of patience. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. Around me panic kept growing. Calls. Messages. Excuses. Nothing worked. Ethan Cole had vanished. Then another problem arrived. A court clerk stepped into the room. The judge denied the delay request. The room froze. "What?" someone asked. "The hearing begins at 9. "Without lead counsel?" The judge's exact words were. She checked her notes. Then she read. "The court schedule is not dependent upon one attorney's punctuality." Nobody spoke. The clerk left. The door closed. And suddenly everyone looked terrified. Because this wasn't just a lawsuit. This case could destroy Damien's company. Thousands of employees depended on the outcome. Investors. Contracts. Entire divisions. One bad ruling could start a chain reaction. For a moment I almost felt sorry for Damien. Almost. The billionaire looked exhausted. Not scared. Exhausted. Like he hadn't slept. Like this fight had already lasted too long. The partner rubbed his forehead. "We need contingency plans." "We don't have contingency plans." "We need one." "Who argues the hearing?" Nobody answered. Because nobody wanted the responsibility. I watched them avoid eye contact. Senior lawyers. Experienced professionals. People who usually acted untouchable. Now they looked trapped. That surprised me. Then something even stranger happened. Damien looked directly at me. For a second I thought he was staring at someone behind me. But there was nobody there. Just me. The intern. He frowned slightly. "Who is she?" I nearly dropped a folder. The partner glanced over. "Oh, that's Ava. Just Ava. Not even my last name." I fought the urge to laugh. "Months working here. Still just Ava." "The intern?" Damien asked. "Yes." His attention moved away instantly. Which should have annoyed me. Instead it felt normal. Invisible again. Safer that way. The room erupted into another wave of frantic discussion. I knelt beside the evidence boxes. At least documents made sense. People rarely did. I began organizing exhibit binders, financial reports, email records, contracts, witness statements. The familiar routine helped steady my nerves. Then I noticed something. A red tab. Misfiled. I pulled it free. A forensic accounting report. Opposing counsel's report. I almost put it back. Almost. Instead I flipped through a few pages. Numbers. Graphs. Conclusions. Then I stopped. Something felt wrong. I looked again. And again. My pulse quickened. No. That couldn't be right. I grabbed another report. Compared dates. Compared figures. Compared signatures. A strange chill moved through me. The calculations didn't match. Not exactly. One report used fourth quarter revenue. Another used third quarter projections. The opposing side had blended different reporting periods together. The result made losses appear dramatically larger. Large enough to support their entire claim. I blinked. Maybe I misunderstood. I checked again. Same result. The mistake remained. Not small. Not technical. Huge. The kind of mistake that could destroy an argument. Or destroy a company. My heart started beating faster. I flipped through more pages. Looking for confirmation. Looking for anything. There it was. Again. And again. The same inconsistency. Hidden inside hundreds of pages. Easy to miss. Easy to ignore. Unless someone actually read everything. Nobody read everything. Except interns. Because interns got stuck with impossible amounts of paperwork. I slowly stood. The room buzzed around me. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. I looked at the report in my hands. Then at the senior lawyers. Then back at the report. Should I say something? The question sounded ridiculous. Of course I should. But another voice answered immediately. Who would listen? An intern interrupting a crisis? A 23-year-old explaining accounting errors to attorneys with decades of experience? I could already imagine their expressions. Polite dismissal. Embarrassed smiles. Patronizing thanks. I hated that I knew exactly how it would go. My phone vibrated again. This time it was my mother. I declined the call. Not now. The room felt smaller. Louder. More desperate. One associate slammed a folder onto the table. We're out of time. Nobody disagreed. I looked down at the report again. The error sat there. Waiting. A loaded weapon nobody else had seen. Then Damien spoke. Quietly. Yet somehow everyone heard him. What are our options? Nobody answered immediately. That silence felt dangerous. The kind that changed things. I glanced at the evidence in my hands. The numbers. The dates. The inconsistency. A mistake worth $600 million. My mouth went dry. For the first time all morning, I wasn't thinking about coffee. Or filing documents. Or staying invisible. I was thinking about something much bigger. Something terrifying. Because deep down, I knew exactly what I was holding. And if I was right, I might be the only person in this room who had noticed it. I took a step forward. Then another. The report felt heavier with every second. And suddenly, every decision after this moment would change my life. Excuse me, I said. The room turned toward me. Every face. Every eye. Every expectation. And for the first time since arriving at the courthouse, I stopped being invisible. I thought finding the mistake was the hard part. I was wrong. Getting anyone to listen was worse. The conference room had gone completely silent after I spoke. Not the good kind of silence. The uncomfortable kind. The kind where people wonder whether someone just embarrassed themselves. 20 pairs of eyes stared at me. I suddenly became very aware of the report in my hands. And of the fact that I was an intern standing in a room full of people whose hourly rates cost more than my monthly rent. A senior associate blinked. Excuse me? I swallowed. The accounting report. Nobody moved. I forced myself to continue. I think there's a problem with it. A few eyebrows lifted. Not because they believed me. Because they didn't. The partner nearest the table gave a short laugh. You're reviewing forensic accounting now? A couple people smiled. Not kindly. My face grew warm. For 1 second I considered sitting down. Pretending I never said anything. Life would be easier. Safer. Then I looked at the report again. The numbers hadn't changed. The mistake was still there. So was $600 million. I checked it 3 times, I said. Nobody answered. The room felt smaller by the second. The partner folded his arms. With respect, Ava, these reports were prepared by experts. I nodded. I know. And reviewed by multiple legal teams. I know. And you found an error they all missed? The question wasn't really a question. It was a dismissal wrapped in polite language. I heard a few quiet chuckles. Something inside me wanted to disappear. But another part was getting irritated. Because nobody had actually looked. They were rejecting me before hearing me. Damien Cross remained near the window. Watching. Not helping. Not interrupting. Just watching. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. That somehow annoyed me too. I took a breath. The reports used different financial periods. The room stayed quiet. I continued. The losses are calculated using fourth quarter revenue, but projected using third quarter expenses. A few expressions shifted. Only slightly. Enough for me to notice. The numbers don't align. Still nobody spoke. I opened the report. Flipped pages. Pointed directly at the entries. Here. The partner leaned closer. Another attorney joined him. Then another. The laughter disappeared. Interesting. One associate frowned. Wait. He grabbed the report. Turned pages rapidly. Then stopped. His expression changed. That tiny reaction gave me more confidence than any compliment ever could. What is it? Someone asked. The associate didn't answer immediately. He looked again. Then again. Finally he muttered, "That's strange." The room shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough. Doubt had entered the conversation. And doubt spreads fast. Another lawyer stepped forward. "Let me see." Soon 3 people were checking calculations. Nobody was laughing now. I looked toward Damien. For the first time he wasn't staring through me. He was paying attention. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. Not pride. Pressure. Because now they were actually listening. And if I was wrong, there would be nowhere to hide. A phone suddenly rang. Everyone jumped. The partner answered instantly. "Ethan?" Hope flashed across several faces. Then disappeared. The call lasted less than 10 seconds. When it ended, the partner looked worse. What happened? He lowered the phone. It wasn't him. The room deflated. Another dead end. Another unanswered question. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I checked the screen. Mom. Again. 3 missed calls. 1 message. "Call me when you can." I quickly locked the screen. Not now. Definitely not now. Across the room voices grew louder. The lawyers were arguing. Some believed the accounting issue mattered. Others weren't convinced. One senior attorney shook his head. "It won't save us. It changes the damages calculation." Not enough. "It undermines credibility." Not enough. The discussion escalated. I stood there awkwardly. Nobody seemed to know what to do with me. Then Damien finally spoke. "Can she explain it?" The room stopped. Every head turned, including mine. The partner looked surprised. "You want the intern too? Can she explain it?" Same question. Different tone. Nobody argued this time. I suddenly wished I had never opened my mouth. The partner gestured toward the table. "Go ahead." Great. Now I had everyone's attention. Exactly what I didn't want. I walked forward. My legs felt oddly heavy. The report shook slightly in my hands. I hoped nobody noticed. They definitely noticed. I started anyway. Slowly. Carefully. I explained the reporting periods. The discrepancies. The assumptions. The inconsistencies. At first my voice sounded uncertain. Then something unexpected happened. The facts started carrying me. Because facts don't care about confidence. They're either true or they aren't. By the time I finished, nobody interrupted. Nobody laughed. Nobody checked their phone. The room felt completely different. One attorney rubbed his forehead. "How did we miss that?" Nobody answered. Because nobody had a good answer. Another lawyer looked embarrassed. A partner looked annoyed. Not at me. At himself. Then a sharp knock interrupted everything. The court clerk returned. Again. This time she didn't bother stepping fully inside. "Counsel." Everyone turned. "The judge is taking the bench in 5 minutes." 5 minutes? The room exploded into motion. Laptops closed. Folders gathered. Phones grabbed. The countdown had officially begun. Then came the problem nobody wanted to say out loud. Ethan was still missing. No lead attorney. No replacement. No plan. The partner cursed under his breath. Another attorney checked his watch. Someone suggested requesting another delay. Nobody believed it would work. The clerk was already leaving. Then she stopped. "Oh." Everyone looked up. The judge asked one more thing. "What?" She checked her notes. "He wants to know who will be assisting counsel with financial exhibits." Silence. Nobody volunteered. The financial evidence was now the most important part of the case. Everyone knew it. The clerk waited. No answer. Then Damien spoke. "Her." The room froze. I actually looked behind me, just to make sure. There was nobody there. He met me. The clerk glanced up. "The intern?" "Yes." Several attorneys immediately objected. "That's insane. She's not qualified. She's never assisted during trial." The objections piled up. Damien listened. Then looked directly at me. Not through me. At me. "You found the problem." I didn't know what to say. He continued. "You know the documents. The room remained silent. One partner stepped closer. This isn't a classroom exercise. I know. She's inexperienced. I know. Then why? Because she's paying attention. Nobody had a response for that. The words landed harder than they should have. Because they were true. And everyone knew it. The clerk checked her watch. I need an answer. The room looked divided. Half annoyed. Half uncertain. Then the partner turned toward me. His expression suggested he hated what he was about to ask. Ava. I blinked. Yes. Can you assist during the hearing? My mouth went dry. The courtroom. The judge. The media. The billionaire. The lawsuit. Everything suddenly became real. A sensible person would say no. I wasn't feeling very sensible. So I heard myself say, yes. Nobody smiled. Nobody congratulated me. The room simply stared. As if they weren't sure whether I had just volunteered for an opportunity or a disaster. The clerk nodded. I'll notify the court. She left. The door closed. And the silence returned. Different this time. Heavier. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. Unknown number. I frowned. The preview appeared on the screen. Only one sentence. My blood turned cold. Because the message didn't ask a question. It delivered a warning. Stop looking at the evidence. Or you'll end up like Ethan. I pressed block before I could stop myself. The anonymous warning disappeared from my screen. The fear didn't. Miss? I looked up. The courtroom doors were open. Everyone was already moving inside. For half a second I considered walking away. Not forever. Just today. Just long enough to avoid becoming part of whatever disaster was unfolding around Ethan's disappearance. Then I spotted Damien. He was standing alone near the entrance. Not talking. Not checking his phone. Just staring at the courtroom. Like a man preparing for impact. Something about that expression stopped me. I slipped my phone into my pocket and followed everyone inside. The hearing began exactly 3 minutes later. And somehow I ended up sitting at counsel's table. The realization hit me all over again. I wasn't supposed to be here. The courtroom looked bigger from the inside. The polished wood. The elevated bench. The rows of reporters already typing. Every sound seemed amplified. A chair scraping. A pen clicking. A cough. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then sat. And the fight officially began. The opposing attorney wasted no time. Victor Lang. I knew his name before today. Everyone in legal circles did. He had a reputation for smelling weakness. Unfortunately, we looked very weak. He rose calmly. Smoothed his tie. Then smiled. That smile bothered me immediately. Your Honor, he began. Our colleagues appear to be experiencing organizational difficulties this morning. A few people chuckled. Not many. Enough. Victor continued. The absence of lead counsel raises serious concerns regarding preparedness. The attack wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. He wanted everyone in the room focused on one thing. Chaos. Our side looked disorganized. Leaderless. Vulnerable. The judge frowned. Proceed with the substance of the matter, Mr. Lang. Victor nodded politely. But I caught the satisfaction in his eyes. Point scored. The hearing moved forward. Witnesses. Documents. Financial summaries. Arguments. I spent most of the first hour passing exhibits and trying not to embarrass myself. The partner leading our side looked exhausted. Every question felt reactive. Every answer felt rushed. Victor controlled the pace. That worried me. Then something strange happened. A witness testified about projected losses. Numbers filled the room. Charts appeared on screens. Nobody seemed surprised. Except me. Because one figure didn't match. Not exactly. I checked the report. Then checked again. The witness kept talking. I stopped listening to the words. I started listening to the details. Dates. References. Percentages. Tiny things. Things people ignored when they focused on the bigger picture. The witness claimed a financial projection came from January. The report said February. A small difference. Until it wasn't. I quickly wrote a note. Slid it toward the attorney beside me. He barely glanced at it. Then froze. His eyes returned to the page. Interesting. A few minutes later he passed another note forward. Then another. The information eventually reached the partner questioning the witness. For the first time all morning our side pushed back. Art. Can you clarify the source date? The witness hesitated. Only briefly. But I noticed. So. January. The partner held up a document. This report is dated February. Silence. The witness blinked. Victor immediately stood. Objection. The judge allowed the question. The witness shifted in his seat, suddenly less confident. The room felt different. Not dramatically, just enough. A tiny crack had appeared, and everyone saw it. I looked down at my notes, then at the next exhibit, then another. A pattern began emerging. Not proof. Not yet. But something. The witness wasn't lying exactly. He was simplifying, skipping details, leaving out context. The kind of thing that becomes dangerous under oath. Across the room, Victor noticed the shift. His expression tightened. Only for a second. Then it vanished. Professional. Controlled. Still I saw it. So did Damien. I realized he had been watching the exchange closely. When our eyes met unexpectedly, he gave a slight nod. Nothing dramatic. No smile. No praise. Just acknowledgement. Oddly enough, that meant more. Because it felt earned. The hearing continued. More testimony. More documents. More pressure. By lunchtime, the atmosphere had changed. Not completely. But enough that reporters started paying attention. I noticed several glancing toward our table. Toward me. That felt surreal. A few hours ago, nobody remembered my last name. Now people were whispering. My phone buzzed beneath the table. A text from my mother. Call me. Urgent. I stared at the message. My stomach tightened. I couldn't leave. Not now. I typed quickly. In court. I'll call later. The reply arrived instantly. Be careful today. I frowned. That was unusual. Before I could ask why, court resumed. The opportunity disappeared. Then came the turning point. The witness stepped down. The judge reviewed documents. The room settled. For the first time all day, I felt something close to optimism. Dangerous mistake. Because that's exactly when everything exploded. Victor rose unexpectedly. We have newly discovered evidence. Every lawyer on our side stiffened. The partner stood immediately. What evidence? Victor handed over a folder. My pulse jumped. Nobody looked happy. Not even the judge. The folder reached our table. The partner opened it. His face drained of color. Not a little. Completely. The attorney beside me grabbed the documents. Same reaction. My chest tightened. What is it? I whispered. Nobody answered. I grabbed the top page. And understood immediately. The evidence appeared devastating. Internal emails. Financial records. Private communications. Documents suggesting Damien knew about the disputed financial issues long before the lawsuit. The implications were brutal. If authentic, they destroyed our defense. The courtroom erupted. Reporters began typing furiously. Conversations exploded everywhere. The judge demanded order. The damage was already done. I looked toward Damien. For the first time all day, he looked shaken. Not angry. Not defensive. Shaken. That scared me more. Because it felt genuine. The partner leaned toward him. Are these real? Damien didn't answer immediately. His silence lasted too long. Way too long. Then he said something unexpected. I've never seen those emails. The partner stared. You swear? Yes. The answer came instantly. No hesitation. No uncertainty. He sounded offended. Almost hurt. As if the accusation itself bothered him. That reaction stuck with me. Because liars usually over-explain. Damien didn't. He looked confused. Which meant one of two things. The documents were fake. Or someone had hidden something from him too. Neither option felt good. The judge announced a short recess. The courtroom exploded into movement. Lawyers rushed everywhere. Phones rang nonstop. Reporters crowded exits. Chaos. Pure chaos. I slipped away to the evidence table. Something about the emails bothered me. Not the content. The formatting. A tiny detail. One I couldn't quite identify. I studied the pages. Read them again. Then something caught my eye. A metadata reference. Small. Easy to miss. My stomach dropped. Because I recognized the file source. Not from Damien's company. Not from the opposing side. Not from an outside consultant. The files originated from a secure server belonging to our own law firm. I stared at the page. Read it again. Same result. Someone inside our firm had access. Someone inside our firm had supplied the evidence. The noise around me faded. For a second, all I could hear was my own breathing. This wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It wasn't even just about Ethan. Someone on our side was helping destroy us. And judging by the timing, they weren't finished yet. I slowly looked around the crowded courtroom. The attorneys. The assistants. The partners. The people rushing back and forth. One of them knew exactly what was happening. One of them had been working against us the entire time. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't afraid of losing the case. I was afraid of discovering who the traitor was. I thought the traitor would be nervous. I was wrong. The person destroying us looked completely comfortable. That realization followed me through the courthouse hallway long after the judge called a recess. People rushed past carrying folders and coffee. Reporters chased attorneys. Phones rang nonstop. The entire building felt chaotic. Yet whoever leaked those documents was calm enough to keep walking among us. That terrified me. Because confidence usually comes from one of two things: innocence or power. And I was beginning to suspect this wasn't innocence. I slipped into an empty conference room and locked the door. Then I pulled out my phone. The anonymous warning still sat on my screen. Stop looking at the evidence, or you'll end up like Ethan. I stared at it. The words felt different now. Less like a threat, more like a confession. Whoever sent that message already knew Ethan hadn't simply disappeared. They knew something happened to him. The question was what? And why? A knock interrupted my thoughts. My entire body tensed. Another knock. Softer. Ava? I recognized the voice. One of the junior associates. I unlocked the door. What happened? She asked. Nothing. She gave me a look. The kind adults give children when they know they're lying. Unfortunately for her, I was too distracted to care. Ava. What? The courtroom is about to reopen. I nodded. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Be careful. That surprised me. Why? She glanced down the hallway before answering. People are talking. About what? You. Great. Exactly what I needed. She continued. Some think you're helping. And some? She looked uncomfortable. Some think you're causing problems. I laughed. A short, humorless sound. Apparently noticing accounting errors was controversial now. The associate didn't laugh back. That worried me. Because she wasn't joking. The moment she left, I headed toward the records department. Not because I had a plan. Because I had a question. And records were where questions sometimes became answers. The department occupied a quiet section of the building. Almost nobody visited. Which made it perfect. Rows of filing cabinets stretched across the room. Boxes lined shelves. Old case files filled every corner. Most people found the space boring. I found it peaceful. Today it felt different. Someone was already there. A woman sat behind a desk reviewing documents. Gray sweater. Reading glasses. Calm expression. I recognized her immediately. Martha Green. Records manager. She'd worked at the firm longer than most partners. Nobody paid much attention to her. Which probably meant she knew everything. She looked up as I approached. Ava. That surprised me. She knew my name. Hi. Martha studied my face. You look exhausted. Thanks. I didn't mean it as a compliment. Despite everything happening, I almost smiled. Almost. She set down her pen. What are you looking for? Straight to the point. I appreciated that. I glanced around. Then lowered my voice. I need information about document access. Martha's expression didn't change. Interesting. Most people would have asked questions. She didn't. Instead she asked, how much trouble are we talking about? I blinked. What? Minor trouble? She closed a file. Or career-ending trouble? A chill moved through me. Because that sounded less like curiosity, and more like experience. I sat across from her. For the next 10 minutes I explained everything. The leaked evidence. The metadata. The anonymous message. The missing attorney. Martha listened quietly. No interruptions. No skepticism. When I finished, she leaned back. Silent. That silence lasted long enough to make me nervous. Finally she said, I was wondering when someone would notice. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? Martha removed her glasses. Suddenly she looked much older. And much more serious. It means strange things have been happening for months. The room seemed smaller. What kind of things? She opened a drawer. Pulled out a folder. Placed it on the desk. I stared at it. Martha. Look. I opened the folder. Access logs. Security reports. Document requests. At first they seemed random. Then patterns appeared. Repeated access. Late-night file retrievals. Unauthorized searches. Confidential materials moving between departments. None of it made sense individually. Together? It looked dangerous. Very dangerous. Who requested these? I asked. Martha pointed toward several entries. The same name appeared repeatedly. My chest tightened, because I recognized it immediately. Not a junior attorney. Not a clerk. Not an assistant. A partner. A senior partner. One of the most respected people in the entire firm. Richard Hale. I stared at the page, then looked up. No. Martha didn't answer. No. She still didn't answer. The silence said enough. Richard Hale wasn't just respected. He practically helped build the firm. People quoted him, trusted him, admired him. The idea felt impossible, which made it even worse, because impossible things kept becoming real. I rubbed my forehead. There has to be another explanation. Maybe. The way Martha said it suggested she didn't believe that. Neither did I. Not anymore. A notification suddenly appeared on my phone. The courtroom session would resume in 15 minutes. 15. Time was disappearing. Again. I stood. I need proof. Martha nodded. Yes. Actual proof. Yes. Otherwise nobody will believe me. Martha looked toward the folder. Then back at me. I know. The words landed heavily. Because they were true. I was still an intern. Richard Hale was Richard Hale. Nobody chooses the intern. Not when the alternative is power. Not when careers are involved. Not when reputations are at stake. I started gathering the documents. Martha stopped me. Not those. What? Too obvious. She reached beneath her desk, then handed me something unexpected. A small flash drive. I stared at it. What is this? Insurance. That wasn't an answer. Martha smiled faintly. Let's just say I learned a long time ago never to throw important things away. The flash drive felt strangely heavy. What am I looking for? Her expression darkened. The answer to why Ethan disappeared. Every sound around me vanished. For a second I thought I misheard her. What? Martha held my gaze. He didn't miss the trial. My pulse jumped. What are you talking about? He was removed. The words landed like a punch. I stared at her, waiting for clarification, waiting for explanation. Neither came. Instead she checked the time. You should get back to court. Martha. Not here. Frustration surged through me. I had 100 questions. She answered none of them. Then she leaned forward. For the first time all day I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. The kind people can't fake. Ava. I froze. If you keep digging? She stopped. The unfinished sentence somehow felt worse. If I keep digging what? Martha looked toward the door. Then whispered, make sure you're not alone. A second later she stood. Conversation over. Just like that. I left the records department carrying more questions than answers. And one flash drive. The hallway outside buzzed with activity. Nobody noticed me, which was good, because I suddenly felt exposed. Like someone might already know what I had learned. My phone vibrated. Another anonymous message. Different number. Same sender. 3 words. Look behind you. Every muscle locked. Slowly, I turned. And standing at the far end of the hallway was Richard Hale. Watching me. Not talking. Not moving. Just watching. Then he smiled. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't wondering who the traitor was anymore. I was wondering whether he knew that I knew. For the first time Damien looked afraid. Not of losing money. Not of losing the case. Of losing something he couldn't replace. I noticed it the moment Richard Hale smiled at me from the end of the hallway. Because while I stood frozen, Damien saw it too. And whatever passed across his face lasted only a second. A flash. Gone immediately. But I caught it. Fear. Real fear. Then Richard walked away. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just confirmed every suspicion growing inside my head. The rest of the afternoon felt like a blur. Court resumed. Arguments continued. Witnesses testified. Reporters filled social media with predictions about our collapse. Yet my attention kept drifting. Back to Richard. Back to Martha. Back to the flash drive sitting in my pocket. And back to one uncomfortable realization. I was completely in over my head. By midnight I was still awake. The courthouse was gone. The lawyers were gone. The noise was gone. Only silence remained. And somehow silence felt worse. My apartment looked exactly the same as always. Small kitchen. Tiny living room. Stacks of student loan paperwork on the table. A leaking faucet I couldn't afford to fix. Normal life. Except nothing felt normal anymore. My laptop glowed in the darkness. News articles covered the screen. Legal team in crisis. Trial turns against billionaire CEO. Lead attorney still missing. Each headline landed like another weight. I closed the browser. 5 seconds later I opened it again. Bad habit. The news hadn't improved. Neither had my mood. My phone buzzed. Mom. Again. This time I answered. Ava. Her voice immediately softened. Oh, thank goodness. Guilty until proven innocent. You haven't called. I know. You never forget to call. I rubbed my eyes. The exhaustion felt physical now, like carrying bricks inside my body. I'm sorry. Mom was quiet. Then she asked the question I'd been avoiding. Are you okay? No. Not even close. I stared at the dark window beside me. At my own reflection. Messy hair. Red eyes. Coffee-stained sweatshirt. A person pretending everything was under control. Yeah. The lie sounded weak. Mom noticed. Mothers always do. Ava. I'm fine. Another silence. Then she changed the subject, which somehow hurt more, because she knew pushing wouldn't help. Before ending the call, she said something unexpected. Don't let important people convince you that you're small. I frowned. What? You've always done that. I laughed quietly. I don't think billionaires are exactly worried about me. Maybe they should be. Then she hung up, leaving me alone with those words. Maybe they should be. At 2 a.m, I finally inserted Martha's flash drive into my laptop. The screen loaded slowly. Folder after folder appeared. Access logs. Internal emails. Security reports. Archived communications. My exhaustion disappeared instantly. I started reading. Then reading faster. Then faster. Hours passed. Patterns emerged. Names repeated. Documents moved between departments without authorization. Confidential files accessed at strange times. And always, Richard Hale's name appeared somewhere nearby. Not directly. Never directly. Smart people rarely leave fingerprints. But traces remained. Enough to raise questions. Not enough to prove anything. I hated that. Because questions don't win cases. Proof does. At some point, sunlight appeared through the blinds. Morning. Again. I hadn't slept. Not even a minute. I showered. Changed clothes. Drank terrible coffee. Then headed back toward the courthouse. Halfway there, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, I answered. Hello. Ava. My steps slowed immediately. I recognized the voice. Damien. I glanced around. Confused. How did you get my number? Pause. Then. I have resources. Despite everything, I smiled. Barely. What do you need? Another pause. Longer this time. I need to talk to you. Something in his voice felt different. Less controlled. Less polished. More human. About the case? Partly. That answer raised even more questions. An hour later, I found myself inside a private conference room overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Expensive furniture. Coffee that probably cost more than my groceries. Damien stood near the glass, looking down at the streets below. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he handed me a photograph. I frowned. The picture showed dozens of people standing in front of a manufacturing facility. Families. Workers. Children. A company picnic maybe. What is this? My Ohio plant. I looked again. Still confused. Damien finally sat down. For the first time since meeting him, he looked tired. Not courtroom tired. Life tired. The difference mattered. There are 8,000 employees connected to that facility. I nodded slowly. Okay. And that's one location. Understanding arrived gradually. Not all at once. Like dawn. Not lightning. Damien continued. Every article says this case is about me. His fingers tightened around a coffee cup. It isn't. I stayed quiet. So he kept talking. People see a billionaire. His laugh sounded hollow. They assume I'll be fine. He wasn't asking for sympathy. That surprised me. He sounded frustrated. Almost trapped. The company survives? He shrugged. The company survives. And if it doesn't? His jaw tightened. Then thousands of people don't. The room fell silent. I looked down at the photograph. Really looked. Not numbers. Not headlines. People. Actual people. The lawsuit suddenly felt different. Bigger. Messier. More complicated. Because consequences always are. Damien stared out the window again. My father started this company. That caught my attention. He rarely volunteered personal information. Now it seemed impossible to stop. He worked 18-hour shifts. A faint smile appeared. Thought sleep was a conspiracy. I laughed before I could stop myself. He looked surprised, then smiled too. Briefly. The expression vanished almost immediately. But it changed something. The distance between us felt smaller. Not gone. Smaller. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it, and whatever he saw erased the smile completely. Damien? No answer. He stared at the screen. Reading. Then reading again. The color drained from his face. My stomach tightened. What happened? For several seconds he didn't move. Finally he handed me the phone. An article filled the screen. New evidence expected. Major revelations anticipated. Anonymous source inside defense team. My pulse accelerated. Inside defense team. Not outside. Inside. The leak was continuing. The traitor wasn't done. And suddenly the clock felt louder. Faster. More dangerous. Damien looked at me. Not as an intern. Not as a helper. Not even as a lawyer. As someone standing beside him in the middle of a storm. What if we're already too late? The question lingered between us. I didn't answer immediately. Because honestly, I didn't know. The evidence looked terrible. The case was slipping. The leaks were spreading. The people responsible remained protected. Everything pointed toward failure. Everything except one thing. Me. I stood, picked up my bag, and slipped Martha's flash drive into my pocket. My fear hadn't disappeared. Probably never would. But something else had appeared beside it. Purpose. Clear. Sure. Impossible to ignore. I looked directly at Damien. Then at the city beyond the glass. Then back at him. We're not done yet. He studied me. Like he was trying to decide whether to believe that. Maybe I was too. Because the truth was simple. I couldn't quit now. Not after Ethan. Not after Martha. Not after everything I'd seen. Someone had started this war. Someone inside our own firm. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I stopped wondering whether I belonged in the fight. I made a decision. I was going to find the traitor. No matter who it was. Even if it destroyed the people nobody dared to question. I smiled when Richard Hale congratulated me. That scared him more than anger ever could. At least I think it did. Because the moment I smiled, his eyes narrowed. Just slightly. The reaction lasted less than a second. Most people would have missed it. I didn't. Neither did he. You're doing impressive work, Ava? His voice sounded warm. Supportive. Almost proud. The perfect mentor. The perfect lie. We stood outside Courtroom 4 while attorneys rushed around us. Anyone watching would have thought we were having a pleasant conversation. They would have been wrong. I nodded. Thank you. Richard studied me. Waiting. For what? A confession? A mistake? Some sign that I knew what he had done? I gave him nothing. For the first time since joining the firm, I understood something important. Knowledge was power. But hidden knowledge? That was a weapon. And I wasn't ready to use mine yet. See you inside, Richard said. Then he walked away. I watched him disappear into the crowd. My phone buzzed. A message from Martha. Don't trust anyone who's suddenly nice. I almost laughed. Too late. The courthouse had become a building full of suddenly nice people. The next few days changed me. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Quietly. Like water wearing down stone. While attorneys argued strategy, I studied. While reporters chased headlines, I studied. While everyone obsessed over courtroom drama, I studied. Case law. Financial records. Witness histories. Internal emails. Security logs. Everything. I stopped trying to prove myself. That was exhausting. Instead, I focused on learning things nobody else knew. Funny how much stronger I became when I stopped worrying about being noticed. Most people still treated me like an intern. Good. I wanted them to. Because invisible people hear everything. One evening I sat alone in the firm's library. The building was nearly empty. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The city lights blurred beyond the glass. I had been reviewing witness statements for nearly 6 hours. My eyes burned. My coffee was cold. And then I found it. A contradiction. Tiny. Almost laughably small. 2 witnesses described the same meeting. Same room. Same date. Same participants. Completely different timelines. I sat up straighter. Interesting. Very interesting. I pulled additional records. Then more. The contradiction grew. One witness couldn't have been where he claimed. Not physically. The access logs proved it. A strange excitement replaced my exhaustion. Not because I'd solved something. Because I was getting closer. The puzzle pieces were finally starting to connect. My phone vibrated. Damien. I stared at the screen. Then answered. Still working? His voice sounded tired. Still breathing. Pause. Then a quiet laugh. I smiled despite myself. What time is it? He asked. I checked. 11:42. Another pause. That's not healthy. Neither is being sued for $600 million. Fair point. The silence that followed felt comfortable. Unexpectedly comfortable. That surprised me. Because Damien and I rarely talked about anything except the case. Tonight felt different. Maybe because we were both exhausted. Maybe because disasters make honesty easier. I have a question. Okay. Why did you call me? The line went quiet. Long enough that I wondered if he'd hang up. Instead he answered. Because everyone else wants something. I blinked. What does that mean? It means investors want reassurance. His voice sounded distant. Executives want certainty. Pause. Lawyers want answers. And me? You ask questions. The answer caught me off guard. I didn't know what to say. Neither did he. The silence stretched. Then he cleared his throat. Did you find anything tonight? Back to business. Safer territory. I glanced at the documents spread across the table. Maybe. I need more proof. Of what? I hesitated. Richard. The leaks. The conspiracy. None of it felt safe over the phone. So I chose my words carefully. Of who's moving the pieces. The line went silent again. This time intentionally. Because he understood. Be careful, Ava? Something about the way he said it bothered me. Not because it sounded controlling. Because it sounded personal. As if he'd been thinking about it. As if he worried. The realization made me uncomfortable. Not in a bad way. Just unfamiliar. I changed the subject. Fast. After the call ended, I returned to work. Hours later, I finally found Martha's hidden file. Not on the flash drive. Buried inside it. Encrypted. Password protected. It took nearly 40 minutes to unlock. When it finally opened, I stopped breathing. There it was. The evidence. Real evidence. Not theories. Not suspicions. Proof. Access records. Private communications. Deleted messages recovered from backup servers. Enough information to expose the leaks. Enough information to destroy Richard Hale. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Not even close. I kept scrolling. Then froze. Because another name appeared repeatedly. A name I recognized immediately. Victor Lang. The opposing attorney. My pulse accelerated. No way. I read the documents again. Then again. Same result. Richard wasn't acting alone. Someone inside our firm had been communicating with the opposition. Directly. Secretly. For months. The room suddenly felt too quiet. Too small. Too dangerous. I stared at the evidence. A normal person would have gone straight to the partners. Straight to the judge. Straight to Damien. I almost did. Almost. Then I remembered something. The anonymous warnings. The missing attorney. The leaked evidence. Every move happened at exactly the wrong moment. Whoever built this scheme understood timing. And if I revealed everything now, they would adapt. Destroy records. Change strategies. Disappear. No, I couldn't rush. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw the board clearly. And for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was planning. The next morning the courtroom felt different. Not because anyone else had changed. Because I had. The attorneys still underestimated me. The reporters still ignored me. Richard still smiled. Victor still acted confident. Perfect. Let them. Nobody noticed the copies hidden in my bag. Nobody noticed the backup files. Nobody noticed the timeline I'd built connecting every leak. Nobody noticed that I already knew far more than I should. That became my advantage. By afternoon, another witness took the stand. Victor seemed unusually relaxed. Richard seemed unusually optimistic. That alone told me something. They believed they were winning. Good. People make mistakes when they feel safe. Then my phone vibrated. One message. From Martha. 3 words. Check the photo. I frowned. What photo? Then I remembered. The company photograph Damien showed me. The one from Ohio. Confused, I opened the image. Zoomed in. And froze. Standing near the back of the crowd. Partially hidden behind a group of employees. Was someone I recognized. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Someone officially reported missing. My pulse pounded. Because the man smiling in that photograph was Ethan Cole. And according to the date stamp, The picture had been taken 3 days after he supposedly disappeared. He didn't deny it. That was the moment everything changed. Not because Richard confessed. Because for the first time he stopped pretending to be surprised. I was standing across from him in a crowded courthouse elevator. Just the two of us. 20 floors. No escape. The photograph of Ethan sat hidden inside my bag. The same photograph that proved he was alive 3 days after his so-called disappearance. Richard noticed me watching him. Long night. His voice remained calm. Professional. I held his gaze. Depends. A small smile appeared. Difficult answer. I've been finding a lot of those lately. Something flickered across his face. Recognition. Not fear. Not yet. Recognition. The elevator doors opened. Richard stepped out. Then paused. For half a second I thought he might say something important. Instead he adjusted his tie. Careful, Ava. The doors closed, leaving me alone. But not confused. That wasn't advice. It was a warning. And warnings only matter when someone believes you are getting close. Good. Because I was. Very close. The next 48 hours became a series of small disasters. Not ours. Theirs. At first nobody noticed. One witness changed a date during testimony. A simple mistake. Except the original date supported Victor's argument. The new date damaged it. Victor spent 15 uncomfortable minutes trying to recover. The witness only became more confused. Then another problem appeared. Financial records refused to cooperate. Numbers cited publicly didn't match internal filings. Spreadsheets contradicted reports. Reports contradicted testimony. Tiny inconsistencies. Nothing fatal. Yet. But cracks were spreading. And once cracks appear, people start looking closer. That was the real danger. Not mistakes. Attention. I watched Victor during court. His confidence remained. Mostly. Still, something had changed. He checked notes more often. Asked for additional breaks. Whispered to assistants repeatedly. The man who once looked untouchable suddenly looked busy. Busy people make mistakes. The courtroom wasn't the only place changing. Richard was unraveling too. Slowly. Almost invisibly. But I noticed. One afternoon I walked into a conference room unexpectedly. Richard immediately closed his laptop. Too quickly. His smile arrived a second later. Too late. Another day I passed him in the hallway. He didn't notice me. He looked distracted. Agitated. Talking on the phone. I don't care what he said. Pause. No. Handle it. Another pause. Then silence. Because he saw me. The call ended immediately. Interesting. Very interesting. Martha noticed it too. We met late that evening inside the records department. The building had mostly emptied. Only a few lights remained on. Rain tapped against the windows again. The weather seemed determined to match the mood. He's nervous. Martha didn't look up from her paperwork. He should be. I sat across from her. The photograph lay between us. Ethan's smiling face stared back. Alive. Present. Impossible. I still don't understand. Martha finally looked up. Which part? Why fake a disappearance? She sighed. Maybe nobody faked it. That answer made my stomach tighten. What does that mean? It means disappearing and being hidden aren't the same thing. The room suddenly felt colder. I stared at Ethan's photograph. Then at Martha. You think someone forced him out? I think Ethan knew something. Pause. And people who know dangerous things tend to become inconvenient. The words settled heavily between us. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then my phone buzzed. Damien. Again. I answered. Immediately. That surprised me. A few weeks ago I would have hesitated. Now I didn't. Ava. His voice sounded different. Tense. What's wrong? We need to meet. My pulse quickened. Why? Another pause. Then. Because I found something. An hour later we met inside a private office overlooking the city. The lights below looked endless. Tiny stars scattered across the darkness. Damien stood beside the window. Exactly like before. Except this time he looked angry. Not loud angry. Controlled angry. The dangerous kind. Without speaking he handed me a folder. I opened it. Read the first page. Then the second. Then the third. My eyebrows rose. Where did you get this? Internal company audit. I kept reading. The information was explosive. Secret transactions. Unusual payments. Money moving through consulting firms that barely existed. Large amounts. Very large amounts. And every trail eventually pointed toward one place. The group funding the lawsuit. I looked up. They created the damage they're suing over. Damien nodded. The frustration in his eyes was impossible to miss. They caused losses. Pause. Then blamed us. I leaned back, trying to process everything. The case wasn't built on fraud exactly. That would have been easier. It was built on manipulation. A much harder thing to prove. Which explained why it survived this long. Damien sat down. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then he surprised me. Again. You should leave. I blinked. What? You've done enough. I stared at him, certain I misheard. He looked away. Toward the city. Toward anything except me. This is getting bigger. His voice sounded rough. The leaks. Ethan. Richard. He exhaled slowly. I don't like where this is going. Something about that bothered me. Not because he wanted me safe. Because he sounded guilty. Like he blamed himself. You didn't create this. His jaw tightened. You don't know that. The answer caught me off guard. What does that mean? Immediately he regretted saying it. I saw it happen. His expression shifted. Too late. Ava? What does that mean? Nothing. Silence. The frustrating kind. The kind that answers questions without answering them. Finally he shook his head. Not tonight. I hated that response. Partly because I wanted answers. Mostly because I knew he was hiding something. Not betrayal. Something else. Something personal. And for the first time, I realized Damien wasn't just protecting his company. He was protecting a secret. The meeting ended shortly afterward. Neither of us mentioned it again. But the conversation stayed with me. Especially one detail. The guilt. It looked genuine. Hours later, another piece finally fell into place. I was reviewing Ethan's timeline for the 100th time. Photographs. Security reports. Travel records. Phone activity. Then I noticed something strange. A gap. Tiny. Easy to miss. One missing security camera recording. Only 11 minutes. Yet those 11 minutes happened on the morning Ethan disappeared. I pulled additional records. Cross-checked timestamps. Reviewed building access logs. Then I found it. The missing footage wasn't deleted. It had been relocated. Hidden. Deliberately. My hands trembled slightly as the file loaded. The video quality was terrible. Grainy. Blurred. But clear enough. I watched Ethan enter the parking garage. Alone. Then another figure appeared. A second person. Waiting. My breath caught. The footage didn't show a face. Only a silhouette. A conversation followed. Brief. Tense. Then Ethan got into a vehicle. Not willingly. Not exactly by force. Something in between. The kind of movement people make when they realize they don't have a choice. I replayed it 3 times. Same conclusion every time. Ethan never abandoned the trial. He never ran. He never disappeared voluntarily. Someone removed him. Someone planned it. Someone with access. Someone powerful. I stared at the frozen screen. My pulse pounding. Because the moment that truth became real, the lawsuit stopped being the biggest problem. And something much darker took its place. I thought finding the truth would make me feel stronger. I was wrong. The truth made everything worse. Because once I understood what was happening, I couldn't pretend it was just a lawsuit anymore. I couldn't tell myself it was only about money, or corporate rivalry, or legal strategy. The people behind this had built something much darker. And somehow I was standing directly in its path. The security footage replayed on my laptop for the 10th time. Ethan entering the parking garage. The waiting vehicle. The unidentified figure. The conversation. Then Ethan leaving with them. Not willingly. Not unwillingly. Like someone who had been given a choice that wasn't really a choice. I paused the video. Zoomed in. Enhanced the frame. Again. Nothing. The face remained hidden. Frustration settled into my chest. I was close. Painfully close. Yet the most important piece remained missing. My phone buzzed. A message from Martha. Anyone following you? I frowned. No. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then returned. Good. That means they haven't decided yet. My stomach dropped. I called immediately. She answered on the second ring. What does that mean? Silence. Then a sigh. It means people like Richard don't panic right away. Her voice sounded tired. They evaluate. I sat up straighter. And after they evaluate? Another pause. They remove problems. The line went quiet. Neither of us needed to define the word. I understood perfectly. For the first time since this began, genuine fear arrived. Not courtroom fear. Not career fear. Personal fear. The kind that follows you home. The kind that checks locks twice. The kind that notices unfamiliar cars. I hated that feeling. Because it worked. Fear makes people stop. Fear makes people quit. Fear makes people stay silent. Maybe that was the point. The next morning I met Damien before court. The city was barely awake. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Rain streaked across the windows. Neither of us looked rested. He slid into the seat across from me, then immediately noticed my expression. What happened? I handed him the security footage stills. His eyes moved across the pages, slowly, carefully. Then he leaned back. No words. Just silence. A heavy silence. Finally. That's Ethan. I nodded. Alive. At that moment, yes. His jaw tightened. I watched him reread the photographs. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not shock. Recognition. That caught my attention immediately. You know something. His head lifted. What? You know something. Ava? You do. The words came out sharper than intended. But I wasn't wrong. He looked away. That was answer enough. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then Damien rubbed his forehead. Exhausted. Defeated. Like someone carrying something too heavy for too long. When this started. His voice lowered. I thought they were attacking the company. I waited. They weren't. My pulse quickened. What were they attacking? His answer came quietly. My father built something valuable. Pause. Not just a company. Another pause. Control. I frowned. What does that mean? He hesitated. Again. Always again. Then finally. There are investors who profit from collapse. The sentence settled heavily. They don't want to own successful businesses. He looked directly at me. They want to buy broken ones. Understanding arrived slowly. Like cold water. The lawsuit. The sabotage. The leaks. The financial manipulation. Not random. Engineered. Deliberate. A strategy. Destroy value. Create panic. Force a collapse. Then profit. The realization made me feel sick. Because it was bigger than I imagined. Much bigger. Court resumed shortly afterward. And karma finally started showing itself. Not dramatically. Quietly. A witness contradicted sworn testimony from 2 weeks earlier. Another couldn't explain missing financial records. Victor objected more than usual. Richard looked distracted. The pressure was working. Tiny cracks became visible. Only if you knew where to look. I did. Every lie requires maintenance. Eventually maintenance becomes impossible. That afternoon Martha called. Her voice sounded urgent. Come alone. No greeting. No explanation. Just those 2 words. I left immediately. 20 minutes later I arrived at a storage facility on the edge of the city. Gray buildings. Chain-link fences. Security cameras. The kind of place nobody notices. Martha waited near Unit 117. She looked nervous. Actually nervous. That alone frightened me. What happened? Without answering, she unlocked the door. Inside sat dozens of boxes. Files. Hard drives. Archived records. Years of information. I stared. What is all this? Martha swallowed. The things they thought were gone. My pulse accelerated. Richard. And others. She handed me a folder. The first page contained transaction records. The second page contained communications. The third page changed everything. Names. Dozens of names. Executives. Consultants. Investors. Attorneys. People connected through shell companies and hidden payments. The conspiracy wasn't one person. It wasn't Richard. It wasn't Victor. It was a network. A system. A machine. And Ethan had stumbled into it. I kept reading. Then stopped. One specific entry caught my eye. A payment. Large. Very large. Transferred 3 weeks before Ethan disappeared. Recipient unknown. Purpose hidden. Approval signature visible. I stared at the signature. Then looked again. Because I recognized it. Not Richard. Not Victor. Someone else. Someone nobody suspected. Someone much closer. The realization hit hard. Too hard. No. Martha immediately noticed. What? I handed her the page. She read it. Then closed her eyes. Just for a second. That told me everything. She already knew. The betrayal reached further than either of us expected. Far enough to change everything. Far enough to destroy trust completely. Hours later, I returned home carrying copies of the evidence. The city felt different. Every stranger seemed suspicious. Every passing car caught my attention. Paranoia? Maybe. Or maybe not. I unlocked my apartment door, stepped inside, then froze. Something was wrong. The room looked normal. Mostly. Furniture untouched. Electronics untouched. Nothing stolen. Yet someone had been there. I knew it immediately, because a photograph sat on my kitchen table. One I had never seen before. My hands felt cold. I approached slowly. The photograph showed me, leaving the courthouse, 3 days ago, taken from a distance. Someone had been watching. The message written on the back contained only one sentence. Stop digging, or the next person disappears too. For several seconds I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe normally, just stared. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Without speaking, a distorted voice filled the line. Come. Almost polite. You have until tomorrow morning. The line disconnected. Just like that. No explanation. No negotiation. No second chance. I looked down at the photograph again. Then at the evidence spread across my table. Then at the dark apartment around me. And for the first time since this started, I realized the choice wasn't between winning and losing. It was between safety and truth. For the first time he looked afraid of losing. Not Damien. Not me. Richard. The man who had spent weeks acting untouchable sat perfectly still at the defense table. Too still. Like someone trying very hard not to reveal panic. That was when I knew. The balance had shifted. Not completely. Not yet. But enough. Enough for them to realize they were no longer controlling the story. Court resumed at 9. By 9:15 Victor was already sweating. The previous night's threat hadn't stopped me. It had done the opposite. Every intimidating message. Every warning. Every attempt to silence me. All of it pointed to one conclusion. The evidence mattered. People don't threaten you over useless information. They threaten you when you're right. I sat beside the legal team. No longer organizing files. No longer fetching coffee. No longer invisible. The same people who once ignored my suggestions now waited for my input before speaking. The change felt strange. But there wasn't time to think about it. The next witness had arrived. And I knew exactly where to aim. The witness took the stand. A financial consultant. Confident. Polished. Prepared. At least he thought he was. Victor guided him through direct testimony. Everything sounded perfect. Almost too perfect. Numbers. Reports. Damage estimates. Predictions. The same narrative they had repeated since the beginning. Then cross-examination started. A senior attorney from our team approached. Halfway through he glanced toward me. A tiny signal. My turn. I slid a document across the table. His eyes scanned it. Then he smiled. Just slightly. The witness didn't notice. Big mistake. Could you explain this payment? The attorney displayed a record on the screen. The consultant frowned. What payment? This one. The document enlarged. A transfer. $7 million. Silence. The witness adjusted his glasses. I don't recognize that. Interesting answer. Because his signature appeared directly underneath it. The courtroom shifted. Not dramatically. Subtly. Like air pressure changing before a storm. The attorney remained calm. Your signature appears here. The witness looked again. A little longer this time. Then. I may have authorized it. A few people exchanged glances. That wasn't a good recovery. The attorney continued. Who received the money? I don't remember. $7 million? Silence. The witness swallowed. I would need to review records. The attorney nodded. Then revealed the next document. A connected transaction. Then another. Then another. One payment became 6. 6 became 11. The witness's confidence disappeared piece by piece. Every answer created another problem. Every explanation contradicted a previous statement. The jury noticed. The judge noticed. Most importantly, Victor noticed. I watched him scribble notes furiously, trying to stop damage already spreading. Too late. The avalanche had started. Outside the courtroom, things weren't going much better for Richard. Martha's archived files were becoming a nightmare for him. Several documents had already been admitted into evidence. More were waiting. Each one connected another thread. Another payment. Another hidden communication. Another lie. The system they built wasn't collapsing all at once. It was collapsing publicly. Which was much worse. During lunch recess my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Again. I stared at the screen. Then answered. Silence greeted me. A few seconds passed. Then a familiar voice spoke. One I never expected to hear. Ethan? The line remained quiet. My pulse accelerated. Ethan? A shaky breath. Then. They know you're getting close. I stood immediately. My chair scraped across the floor. Several people turned toward me. I ignored them. Where are you? I can't say. His voice sounded exhausted. Different. Like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. Ethan, what happened? Silence. Then. I trusted the wrong person. My chest tightened. Who? The answer came instantly. Too instantly. Like he'd been carrying it for months. Richard. Everything stopped. Not physically. Emotionally. Mentally. For one brief moment, everything froze. Because hearing my suspicion confirmed changed everything. Ethan. Ava. His voice interrupted mine. Urgent. You need to be careful. I know. No. Another pause. You don't. Something in his tone frightened me. More than the threat. More than the photograph. More than the anonymous calls. Because Ethan sounded defeated. Like someone who knew exactly how dangerous this had become. The line crackled. Then weakened. Ethan? No response. Ethan? The call disconnected. Gone. I stared at my phone. My hands trembling slightly. Not from fear. From certainty. Now I knew. Richard wasn't merely involved. He was central. The problem was proving it. Court resumed 30 minutes later. And the momentum continued shifting. Witness after witness struggled. Records contradicted statements. Emails contradicted testimony. Timelines refused to cooperate. The narrative they built was dying. Slowly. Painfully. Publicly. Then Richard made a mistake. A desperate mistake. The kind people make when pressure outweighs patience. Late that afternoon he submitted a surprise document. New evidence. Allegedly. Victor immediately pushed for admission. The timing felt suspicious. The content felt convenient. Everything about it felt wrong. I reviewed it carefully. Once. Twice. Then a third time. And suddenly I saw it. A date. One tiny date. Incorrect. Almost invisible. But fatal. I stood. Without waiting. Without permission. Without hesitation. The room turned toward me. The judge raised an eyebrow. Miss Carter? I swallowed. Then spoke. Your Honor, that document couldn't exist. Silence. Victor laughed. Actually laughed. The worst thing he could have done. Based on what? I stepped forward. My voice steadier than I expected. The software referenced in that report wasn't released until 6 months later. The courtroom went silent. Victor stopped smiling. I continued. The document claims it was created before the software existed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The judge examined the exhibit. Then looked toward Victor. Then Richard. Then back at the document. The atmosphere changed instantly. The kind of change everyone feels. The kind nobody can ignore. Richard's face lost color. Only for a second. But I saw it. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The judge ordered an immediate review. Court adjourned early. Chaos followed. Reporters rushed outside. Lawyers made frantic calls. Assistants sprinted through hallways. The machine was breaking. And everyone knew it. That evening Damien found me alone inside a conference room. The city glowed beyond the windows. Orange lights. Dark skies. Long shadows. Neither of us spoke immediately. Then he placed something on the table. A folder. Thin. Unremarkable. Dangerous. What's this? His expression hardened. The thing we've been missing. My pulse quickened. I opened it. Read the first page. Then the second. Then stopped. Because suddenly I understood. This wasn't proof of deception. We already had that. This was proof of intent. The missing piece. The thing required to win. The thing connecting sabotage directly to motive. The thing that could destroy everyone involved. I looked up slowly. Where did you get this? Damien didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened. His eyes drifted toward the window. Then back to me. Finally he spoke. And the answer changed everything. I got it from my father. I stared. Confused. Your father died 6 years ago. Damien nodded. A strange sadness appeared behind his eyes. I know. Silence. Then he slid one final document across the table. A handwritten letter. Dated 2 weeks before his father's death. And signed with a warning no one was ever supposed to see. I smiled when he lied to me. That scared him more than anger ever could. Richard was on the witness stand. The courtroom was silent. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he wasn't controlling the room. The room was controlling him. I sat at the counsel table with Damien's father's letter resting beside my notebook. One document. One warning. One truth buried for 6 years. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded the sidewalks. Inside, every seat was full. Executives, attorneys, investors, employees, people whose futures depended on what happened next. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then the final battle began. Richard looked composed. At first, his suit was perfect. His posture was perfect. His answers were prepared. The performance was impressive. Until facts entered the conversation. Those were harder to manage. Victor led him through direct examination. Predictable questions. Predictable answers. The strategy was obvious. Control damage. Minimize involvement. Shift blame. Distance himself from everything. For a while it worked. Then cross-examination started. The courtroom changed immediately. One of our senior attorneys approached the podium. Calm. Patient. Dangerous. The best kind of dangerous. He began simply. Mr. Lawson, do you recognize this email? Richard glanced at the screen. Yes. Your email account? Yes. Your signature? Yes. Easy answers. Comfortable answers. Then came the next question. And why does this email instruct employees to destroy internal records? Silence. Tiny. But noticeable. The attorney waited. The jury watched. The judge watched. Everyone watched. Richard adjusted his tie. That's not what the email says. The attorney nodded. Then enlarged the screen. The highlighted sentence appeared. Destroy all duplicate files before review. The silence grew heavier. Richard shifted in his seat. I was referring to administrative copies. The attorney smiled slightly. A bad sign for Richard. Interesting. Another document appeared. Then another. Then another. Each one narrowing possibilities. Each one reducing explanations. Each one tightening the trap. I watched Richard's confidence slowly disappear. Not dramatically. Gradually. Like water draining from a glass. Across the room, Victor looked exhausted. Weeks ago he seemed unstoppable. Now he looked like a man trying to hold together a collapsing wall. And the wall kept cracking. The attorney introduced financial records next. The same records Martha had hidden before they vanished forever. Secret payments. Consulting contracts. Offshore transfers. Money moving through companies that barely existed. The courtroom screens displayed everything. No rumors. No speculation. Just evidence. Raw and undeniable. Whispers spread through the gallery. The judge called for order twice. Nobody seemed surprised anymore. Only disappointed. Because this wasn't just corruption. It was betrayal. Professional betrayal. Personal betrayal. Institutional betrayal. The kind that damages trust long after headlines disappear. Then came Damien's father's letter. The room grew quiet again. Not legal quiet. Human quiet. The attorney approached the witness stand. Have you seen this document before? Richard looked at the letter. Immediately something changed. Not panic. Recognition. Which was worse. He knew exactly what it was. His answer took several seconds. No. The lie landed heavily. Because everyone saw it. Even people unfamiliar with the case. His face gave him away. The attorney read aloud. Not the entire letter. Just enough. A warning. A prediction. A description of investors attempting to engineer financial collapse from within. The exact scheme now sitting in front of the court. Word for word. Years before it happened. I looked toward Damien. He wasn't watching Richard. He was staring at the letter. His father. His legacy. His warning. Ignored for years. Validated too late. For a moment I forgot about the case. Forgot about the conspiracy. Forgot about everything except the sadness on his face. Victory didn't erase loss. Nothing could. Then the room erupted. Not physically. Emotionally. Because another witness had arrived. Unexpected. Unscheduled. Unavoidable. Ethan. The courtroom froze. Actually froze. Conversation stopped. Pens stopped moving. Even reporters looked stunned. I stood before realizing I had moved. My chair scraped loudly across the floor. Ethan looked thinner. Older somehow. Not by age. By experience. The kind of exhaustion that settles behind someone's eyes. He took the stand. Swore an oath. Then looked directly at Richard. The silence became unbearable. Finally the attorney asked, "Why did you disappear?" Ethan laughed. Not happily. Not bitterly. Just tired. They told me I had a choice. Nobody moved. What choice? Ethan swallowed. Then answered. Leave the case. Pause. Or watch other people pay the price. A chill moved through the courtroom. I felt it. Everyone did. The attorney continued. Who told you that? Ethan didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. Richard. The room exploded. Objections. Arguments. Interruptions. The judge slammed the gavel repeatedly. Order returned slowly. But the damage was done. The truth was finally public. No secret meetings. No hidden files. No anonymous threats. Public. Permanent. Recorded forever. Richard's attorney attempted recovery. Desperately. Questions came quickly. Aggressively. Trying to discredit Ethan. Trying to create doubt. Trying to build confusion. None of it worked. Because the evidence matched. Every statement. Every timeline. Every payment. Every communication. Everything aligned. The story finally made sense. And when truth starts making sense, lies become difficult to maintain. Richard understood that. I saw it happen. His shoulders lowered. His posture changed. His eyes lost something. Not confidence. Resistance. For weeks he fought every accusation. Every document. Every witness. Now he simply looked tired. Human. Broken. The realization struck me unexpectedly. Richard wasn't a monster. Monsters are easy. Monsters feel distant. Richard was worse. He was human. A person who made one compromise. Then another. Then another. Until he couldn't find his way back. That thought didn't excuse him. But it explained him. And somehow that felt sadder. The hearing stretched into late afternoon. Evidence piled higher. Contradictions multiplied. Defenses collapsed. One by one. The conspiracy stood exposed. Not completely. But enough. Enough for consequences to begin. Enough for justice to move. Enough for the truth to survive. Then, just as the judge prepared to adjourn, something unexpected happened. Richard raised his hand. The room turned toward him. Victor looked confused. The judge frowned. Mr. Lawson? Richard stood slowly. His face looked older than it had that morning. Years older. He glanced toward Ethan. Then Damien. Then me. Finally he spoke. And the first sentence out of his mouth changed everything. I wasn't the one at the top. Silence. Absolute silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Because suddenly we all realized the same thing. The conspiracy wasn't finished. The biggest name hadn't been revealed yet. And Richard was finally ready to tell us who it was. I thought victory would feel louder. I was wrong. The loudest thing in the courtroom was regret. It sat in every silence. Every lowered head. Every answer nobody wanted to give. The day began with one question. Who was above Richard? The answer had kept everyone awake. The media. The legal teams. The investors. Even the judge looked more serious than usual. Because Richard had shattered the final illusion. The conspiracy wasn't ending. It was expanding. And everyone wanted to know how far it reached. The courtroom filled before sunrise. Reporters lined every available space. Security doubled. Nobody expected a normal hearing anymore. Neither did I. I sat quietly reviewing notes. Not because I needed them. Because my hands needed something to do. The closer we came to the finish line, the stranger I felt. Months ago I worried about making copies correctly. Now I was helping dismantle one of the largest corporate conspiracies in recent memory. The contrast felt unreal. My phone vibrated. A message from Damien. Good luck today. I stared at it. Then smiled. A simple message. Yet somehow it meant more than any speech. I typed a response. You too. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then nothing. That made me laugh. A real laugh. The kind that arrives unexpectedly. 4 weeks we had discussed evidence, strategy, threats, witnesses, and legal disasters. Now neither of us seemed to know what to say. Maybe because some conversations become harder when they matter. Court began exactly at 9. Richard took the stand again. This time nobody expected resistance. And nobody got it. He looked exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone who had spent years carrying a secret and suddenly couldn't carry it anymore. The judge addressed him directly. Mr. Lawson, yesterday you stated there were individuals above you. Richard nodded. Yes. Do you wish to elaborate? A long silence followed. Not dramatic. Not calculated. Heavy. Finally Richard spoke. I wasn't the architect. The room remained completely still. I was recruited. Pause. I told myself it was temporary. His voice sounded distant, like he was speaking to himself more than anyone else. I told myself I could leave later. Another pause. I kept telling myself that. I watched his hands. They trembled slightly. The confident senior partner from weeks ago was gone. This was someone else. Someone facing consequences. Someone who had finally run out of excuses. Names followed. Several of them. Investors. Executives. Consultants. People who never expected exposure. People who preferred shadows. Now their names entered the public record forever. Every revelation widened the scope of the conspiracy. Every answer confirmed what we suspected. The lawsuit was never about justice. It was never about damages. It was a tool. A weapon. A means to force collapse. And Richard had helped make it possible. The strange thing was this. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not the way I expected. Months ago I imagined exposing him would feel incredible. Instead it felt sad. Watching someone destroy their own life rarely feels triumphant. Even when they deserve the consequences. Especially when they deserve them. Then Ethan returned to the stand. This time without interruptions. Without mystery. Without fear. The courtroom listened carefully. Because everyone wanted the missing piece. The complete story. The truth about his disappearance. Ethan took a slow breath. Then began. They approached me after I discovered unusual transactions. His voice remained steady. They offered money first. Pause. When that failed, they offered partnership opportunities. Another pause. When that failed. He looked toward Richard. They changed strategies. Nobody interrupted. Nobody moved. They threatened careers. His eyes lowered briefly. Then families. The room became very quiet. I felt my stomach tighten. Not because it surprised me. Because hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Ethan continued. I wasn't kidnapped. A few people exchanged confused looks. I wasn't physically forced anywhere. He swallowed. I was cornered. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Cornered. Not dragged away. Not tied up. Not imprisoned. Cornered. The kind of pressure that slowly removes every good option. Until survival starts looking like cooperation. Ethan explained everything. The hidden meetings. The intimidation. The warnings. The pressure campaign. Piece by piece. The final gap disappeared. The story was complete. No missing chapters. No remaining mysteries. Only consequences. Afterward, court recessed briefly. I stepped into an empty hallway. For the first time in weeks, nobody followed me. No reporters. No attorneys. No investigators. Just silence. Actual silence. I hadn't realized how much I missed it. A few minutes later, footsteps approached. Damien. Of course. He stopped beside me. Neither of us spoke immediately. The large courthouse windows filled the corridor with afternoon sunlight. The storm clouds were finally gone. How are you holding up? The question sounded simple. It wasn't. I considered several answers. Then settled on the truth. I don't know. A small smile appeared. Fair. We stood quietly. Then he surprised me. Again. You know what bothers me most? I looked toward him. What? I spent years surrounded by experts. His expression softened. Some of the smartest people in the country. Pause. None of them saw what you saw. I looked away. Embarrassed. The compliment landed harder than expected. I had help. You did. He nodded. Still. Neither of us continued. The unfinished sentence remained between us. Neither ignored it. Neither touched it. Sometimes silence says enough. Court resumed. Closing proceedings moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. The outcome no longer seemed uncertain. By late afternoon, the judge delivered preliminary findings. The lawsuit collapsed. The fraudulent claims collapsed. The conspiracy collapsed. Years of manipulation ended inside a single courtroom. Reporters rushed outside. News alerts exploded across phones. Employees celebrated. Investors panicked. Executives resigned. The world moved forward immediately. But I stayed seated. Watching the room empty. Watching people leave. Watching an ending arrive. Slowly. Unexpectedly. Martha appeared beside me. You did it. I smiled. We did it. She nodded. Then handed me something. A courthouse visitor badge. My first day. The intern badge. Bent at the corners. Slightly faded. I stared at it. For a moment I couldn't speak. Because suddenly I remembered everything. The coffee. The files. The fear. The doubt. The invisible girl nobody trusted. She felt like a different person now. Not because I had become fearless. I hadn't. Not because I stopped doubting myself. I still did. The difference was simpler. I learned I could keep moving even when afraid. That changed everything. As the courtroom emptied completely, I looked one final time at the witness stand. At the judge's bench. At the place where my life changed. Then my phone vibrated. One new message. Unknown number. My pulse immediately accelerated. Not again. I opened it. 3 words appeared on the screen. We need help. Attached beneath the message was a photograph. A photograph of another courtroom. Another case file. And another powerful name connected to corruption. I stared at the image, then read the message again. Because suddenly I realized this story might not be ending at all. It might only be the beginning. The first sign that everything was about to change wasn't the judge speaking. It was the silence. The courtroom had been loud for weeks. Arguments. Whispers. Reporters typing. Lawyers objecting. Today nobody moved. Nobody even coughed. Every person in that room waited for one voice. The judge's. I sat at the same table where I had once organized coffee cups and misplaced files. The same table where nobody knew my name. The same table where people had looked through me as if I were invisible. Now cameras pointed in my direction. That still felt strange. I glanced down at my hands. For months they had been shaking. Today they were steady. Not because I wasn't nervous. Because I was different. The judge adjusted a stack of documents. My pulse sped up. Across the room, members of the opposing team looked exhausted. Some avoided eye contact. Others stared straight ahead. The confidence they once carried had disappeared. Truth had a way of doing that. Beside me sat the billionaire whose future had nearly been destroyed. For months the media had called him ruthless, dangerous, untouchable. But after everything I had learned, I knew a different version. A complicated one. A flawed one. A human one. Without looking at me, he quietly spoke. You ready? I laughed softly. Not even a little. That made him smile. The first genuine smile I had seen from him in days. Then the courtroom doors opened. More reporters entered. The judge looked annoyed. Nobody cared. Everyone wanted to witness the ending. Because this case had become bigger than money. It had become a story. A scandal. A warning. The judge finally began reading. Every word felt painfully slow. Legal language filled the room. Findings. Evidence. Violations. Procedural matters. I tried to listen. Really listen. But my mind kept drifting. Back to the first day. The empty chair. The missing attorney. The panic. The fear. The moment everything changed. A phone vibrated somewhere nearby. The sound felt unbelievably loud. Someone immediately silenced it. Then the judge reached the decision. The room froze. The court finds. Nobody breathed. In favor of the defendant. For a second nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. Then everything happened at once. Voices exploded around me. Reporters stood. People hugged. Phones appeared everywhere. Someone actually cried. I just sat there. Still. Trying to understand what I had heard. We won. After everything. We won. $600 million had been saved. The conspiracy had collapsed. The lies had failed. The people responsible would face consequences. And somehow, an intern had helped make it happen. My phone immediately started vibrating. Message after message appeared. Congratulations. You did it? Call me. Check the news. My screen became impossible to read. I turned it face down. Not yet. I wanted 1 minute. Just one. The billionaire looked at me. For once neither of us spoke. Words weren't necessary. Then he stood and offered his hand. I stared at it. He raised an eyebrow. What? I smiled. Nothing. I shook his hand. The cameras loved that. Flashes exploded around us. A reporter shouted a question. Then another. Then 10 more. Neither of us answered. Security quickly moved us toward a private hallway. The moment the doors closed behind us, the noise disappeared. The silence felt unreal. I leaned against the wall. My legs suddenly felt weak. The adrenaline was leaving. Everything was catching up to me. Weeks of stress. Months of pressure. Sleepless nights. Fear. Doubt. All of it. The billionaire handed me a bottle of water. I accepted it. Thanks. You earned it. I looked away. Compliments still made me uncomfortable. Especially from him. He noticed. You're really bad at accepting praise. I laughed. You noticed? I noticed everything. Something about that answer lingered. Not because it sounded romantic, because it sounded honest. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he reached into his briefcase. My curiosity immediately woke up. What is that? He pulled out a folder. A simple black folder. Nothing special. At least at first. Then he handed it to me. I opened it. And froze. Inside was an employment contract. My name sat at the top. I blinked. Once. Twice. Still there. This is a job offer. I looked up. A job. He looked offended. Not just a job. I continued reading. The position was unbelievable. The salary made me think there had been a mistake. The opportunities listed inside felt unreal. I looked back at him. This can't be serious. It is. I stared. He stared back. Neither of us moved. Finally I asked the obvious question. Why me? His answer came immediately. Because when everyone else failed, you didn't. The hallway suddenly felt very quiet. I looked down at the offer again. Months ago I would have accepted instantly. Without hesitation. Without questions. But something had changed. The version of me who walked into that courthouse wanted approval. Validation. Permission. The version standing here wanted something different. A choice. I closed the folder. His expression shifted. Not disappointment. Confusion. You don't want it? I didn't say that. Then, I took a slow breath. Then I surprised both of us. I need time. He blinked. You need time? I nodded. Yes. The old me would have said yes immediately. The new me needed to think. That difference mattered. For a second he looked shocked. Then he smiled. A real smile. Not the careful public version. The private one. I was hoping you'd say that. Now I was confused. Why? Because it means you're making the decision for yourself. I looked away before he could see how much that affected me. A few minutes later we exited through a private entrance. Outside the city felt different. Maybe because I was different. Reporters remained behind barriers. People crowded sidewalks. News helicopters circled above. The entire world seemed to know about the case. And somehow I had become part of the story. My phone rang again. Mom. I smiled immediately. I answered. Before I could say anything, her voice exploded through the speaker. I saw the news. I laughed. The first completely relaxed laugh I had experienced in months. I know. You won. We won. No, she said firmly. You won. My throat tightened. Not from sadness. From something else. Pride. The kind I had never allowed myself to feel. After the call ended, I stood alone outside the courthouse. The same building that had nearly broken me. The same building that had changed me. People walked around me. Cars moved through traffic. Life continued. Yet everything felt new. I thought about the betrayals. The lies. The fear. The nights I nearly quit. The moments nobody believed me. The moments I barely believed myself. None of it felt wasted anymore. Because every setback had forced me to become stronger. Not louder. Not tougher. Stronger. There was a difference. My phone buzzed again. A new message appeared. From the billionaire. I frowned. He had just left. Why text me? I opened it. One sentence. That's all. One sentence that made me stop walking. One sentence that changed everything. Read. Whatever you choose next, don't choose the version of yourself that thinks she's still an intern. I stared at the screen. Then I smiled. Not because the journey was over. Because it wasn't. For the first time in my life. It felt like it was finally beginning.